Hello, and welcome to the Tao of Our Understanding Recovery Podcast. In this podcast, we discuss mystical works of literature and how they relate to recovery. We hope you enjoy today's podcast episode.
Hello, this is Buddy C. Welcome to the Tao of Our Understanding Recovery Podcast. We're a good crowd today. We have Lori and Brian and Drew and Lou and Oscar. Good to have you guys. We will be discussing the 47th verse of the Tao Te Ching. Any announcements, go to buddyc.org. Lots of resources and things there for you. Check that out. If you have any questions about anything, you can email me at info@buddyc.org, and I'll be happy to respond within a week or sooner. I get behind on my emails. Okay, 47th verse. It's a short one. I'm looking forward to our conversation. Let's start with some readings. Drew, why don't you start us off with the Stephen Mitchell?
All right. Without opening your door, you can open your heart to the world. Without looking out your window, you can see the essence of the Tao. The more you know, the less you understand. The master arrives without leaving, sees the light without looking, achieves without doing a thing.
Thank you. Brian, you have Derek Lynn?
Yeah, I do. It's without going out the door, know the world. Without peering out the window, see the heavenly Tao. The further one goes, the less one knows. Therefore the sage knows without going, names without seeing, achieves without striving.
Thank you. And Lou, you have Red Pine? Is that correct?
Yes. Without going out your door, you can know the whole world. Without looking out your window, you can know the way of heaven. The farther people go, the less they know. Sages, therefore, know without traveling, name without seeing, and succeed without trying.
Thank you. And last but not least, Oscar, you have a Jonathan Starr, I think.
Yes. Without going outside, one can know the whole world. Without looking out the window, one can see the ways of heaven. The farther one goes, the less one knows. Thus, the sage does not go, yet he knows. He does not look, yet he sees. He does not do, yet all is done.
Thank you. Any comments at this point? I'll read my interpretation. It's short. I already possess everything. Perhaps there is no wisdom one can discover outwardly that one does not already possess within. That's it. Drew, you're muted.
Just first impression, it speaks to me about not trying to find what I'm looking for outside of myself, basically. It reminds me of the Alan Watts quote I think I've mentioned in here a few times about how the only peace you'll find at the top of the mountain is the peace you bring with you.
Yes.
If you're looking for something outside of yourself, outside of your home, outside of your present surroundings to bring you what you're looking for, that's not really the best way to go about things.
Thank you. Thank you, Drew. I don't think I mentioned in the beginning, we're all in recovery in some form, mostly 12-step recovery, either alcohol recovery or one or another addiction or Al-Anon. We have our token Al-Anon with us today in Lou. And Lou, I appreciate you coming to the meeting, and you add a lot to this meeting. Thank you. You're always missed when you're not here.
Thank you, buddy.
Now, if we take this and instead of knowing in the physical, knowing in the spiritual, take the house and see the house as us, that we don't go outside of we can see the whole world without going outside of ourselves. We can see anything that we need. I think this is what it's saying. Of course, physically, you can't see the world if you don't go see it. I mean, how can I see the Grand Canyon if I don't go there? Okay. This is like all the other Taoist thought. It's all paradoxical. It's not as if you took it, just read it, what in the world could that mean? It can't mean that. It's like on one of the others, it says, the fool laughs at it, and it wouldn't be the Tao if he didn't laugh. This is one of those that if you didn't say that makes no sense at all, it wouldn't be the Tao. So let's intuitively look at this. Look at it through our spiritual eyes, maybe. Sit with it a little bit and see what comes about. I like the Derek Lynn where it says, without going out the door, know the world. Without peering out the window, see the heavenly Tao. Anytime I am looking outward, thinking my satisfaction, my peace is outside of me, I'm looking in the wrong direction. I can't find it out there. We've all experienced, and all of us have shared how that hasn't worked. It never worked for me. And it's still a trap I can fall into now. One way in early recovery I would fall into that was thinking that if everything was good, that meant I was being blessed. And when things were bad, I had done something wrong. If at any time things weren't good, I had made a mistake. But that's common thought. That's how I was taught to approach life, was what can I change to make my life more comfortable, more successful, better? That's the constant striving. Not to say that it's not good for life to be easy. It's not to say it's not good to be successful. But I put so much of my value in the zeros in my bank account or the number of rental houses that I owned. For me, that's where I placed my value was in the number of houses I owned. The more houses I owned, the more successful I was. Now, when I had a business fail, this was back in 2000, and I had to sell those houses, I lost all of what I thought my value was. That's doing what they're saying, they're cautioning us here. I did not know the solution to that. Now, with time and recovery, I'm starting to see the solution. No matter how much I have outwardly, I'm of the same value. Or how much I owe outwardly, I have the same value. Those things don't make me. And when I stop the striving and using of outward things to create my value and worth, only then can I start experiencing peace and joy. How about the phrase, the more you know, the less you understand? That's the next little stanza. Or, the farther one goes, the less one knows. Or, the more knowledge you seek, the less you will understand. I thought you gained understanding by seeking, by study, by pursuing knowledge. But this is saying the more knowledge you have, the less you understand. What do you think that is?
This is Lou. I was going to say that when I first married, I discovered that my wife was codependent. And so I thought, okay, I'm going to learn everything there is to learn about codependency, what her role in it is in it, what my role in it is in it. And I read every book there was, Claudia Black, all of the thought leaders, all of the research I could find. And I learned a lot, but none of it was helpful. I got twirled around and more confused in terms of what was going on in my life than I did before I started looking up. So I guess it gets simply back to knowledge and wisdom are not the same thing.
Thank you. Oscar?
I was just writing down, there's no wisdom in knowledge when Lou said it. I would speak for myself. I'm in a 12-step program, and it's an ego deflation program, right? And this is ultimate non-existing ego. The sage does not go, yet he knows. He does not look, yet he sees. He does not do, yet all is done. What I hear in this is there is no ego anymore. So there's no I sense anymore. And even the body is in a way an illusion, because when we bring it down to there's only present moment, then that's the moment in which everything disappears. It comes and it disappears at the same time. It's the same thing, only time is going through it. That's why our minds make trick with us, that we think, okay, we have so much years and I have this life and I am this person, but this I is not really there, and it's not really worth something, and it's not really something. Yeah, maybe it's something in our minds, but when I bring it down all the way to the present moment, in which everything comes and goes at the same time, there is complete silence, and that silence is everywhere. It's everywhere. It's like it's at your place now, and it's my place, and it's in your body, and it's outside your body, and it's the moon and the sun, and it's everywhere. It's everything. And this everything has something very close related to the Tao. If it's not the Tao, then it's very close related, and there's a peace and love and silence. And I think the sage finds his identity there instead of where I find it. I find it in my story and in my desires and in my fears. But why? What am I scared of? Why am I fearful? There's no reason. It's only because I identify with this story and I think I'm going to die. I know for sure I'm going to die. So I'm scared as hell. But the sage isn't scared because he knows he's not his story. And how I understand this verse, he has completely let go of this I sense or I identity or ego or story, and is just pure being. And then, of course, everything, and you are everywhere, and everything goes through you. The time goes through you. All what's happening goes through you. It's what we all are. That's the non-dualism in it, because there's no difference between the now in me as the now in you. We are the same spring of life. Something like this. This is where this verse is bringing me, thanks to this sentence. Thus the sage does not go, yet he knows. He knows everything.
Yes.
Thanks.
Thanks, Oscar. Brian?
Two things came to mind for me. One is I think this is speaking to the difference of knowledge versus experience. And man, you can have all the book knowledge in the world, but unless you've experienced it, it's, to me, that's what's important. And another thing, I was thinking about the anonymity aspect of 12-step programs, how we're all equal. You can have this guy over here who has a high school education, but then you got this guy over here who has a PhD, and the PhD may not be able to stop what his addictive behavior is. And then he's sitting over here with a guy that that's got the experience with no education, and when he's got this precious piece of he's sober and able to say, hey, look, this is what I did. This is what worked for me. It's all that inside job, man. When I first got into recovery, I had a friend tell me that. He's like, all this stuff is an inside job. And I didn't ask him what he meant by it, but I was still hung up into that, trying to prove that I was okay. And that didn't go well. So that's what I got. Thanks.
Thank you, Brian. Drew?
One way this speaks to me, especially the line in Stephen Mitchell, the more you know, the less you understand, is, when I've, for years, caught up in addiction and bad mental health. And I just read about all of that, finding books, listening to podcasts, like this podcast, that's been around for years. I'd listen to it every week, trying to learn as much as I can while incorporating other books, other podcasts, things like that. But I was still caught up in everything, and it was because I was just trying to know, trying to memorize things, trying to build all this wealth of knowledge about how to overcome addiction, how to overcome depression or anxiety or whatever I was facing at the moment. So I was spending all of that time just absorbing the information, but not putting it into practice. And that's what this line speaks to me about, is there's a time to, you do need to learn some things, but there comes a time when it's time to put those things into practice. Like, you can read about how to ride a bike for years, but that doesn't get you any closer to riding a bike. You actually have to get on the bike and start riding it. So that's the lesson I'm taking from this, is learn what you can, but the most important thing is actually incorporating it into your life. That's what's been helping me so far.
Thanks, Drew. Yeah, I was thinking on the same lines with what I learned when I came into recovery, was that it wasn't about me learning. It was about me listening to others' experience. You could say learning their experience if you want, just that you're listening. And the real knowledge for me was in the experience, because when I left my first meeting, I didn't leave the meeting thinking, now I know the magic formula, or I know what book I need to read. What I left with was the hope that it would work for me too. I couldn't get that from a book. I could not get that from my usual way of understanding. I was a guy that, when I was a kid, you're going to play the new pinball machine. I'm dating myself. And I'd go up to the pinball machine, and before, the very first thing I did was read the instructions, because I wanted to know how to win. I didn't care about playing. I wanted to win. So I read the instructions, looked at what I needed to hit, and then I played. So I approached recovery the same way. And I couldn't understand how it was not working, because I thought I was following all the instructions. But for me to know, I had to listen to others' experience. I think several of y'all talked about that. I know Brian did in particular. But the further I get away from experience, the less I'm going to understand. That's the real knowing. I think the intuitive knowing may be a good way to say that, because that's what it took for me to start progressing in recovery. Also, now when I read a book, I try to read a book not from a place of learning, as in education learning, I read wanting to see their experience. If I'm reading a recovery or a Zen book, I don't read it so that I can get the magic formula, so to speak. I want to see, if it's a Zen book and we're doing a study on a book, I want to hear the teacher's experience in what meditation did for them. That's different from me just reading the book, trying to learn something about meditation. And sometimes we talked about this actually in our book club, my Monday night book club. What is experience? Because a lot of people don't quite look at experience the same way that I was taught to look at experience in recovery. And maybe you guys have a different view of that. I believe that the higher power, whatever, is in the experience. So I can either read the empty words or I can look for how it worked for them. And I think that's where God is, so to speak, is in the experience. Because I look at my life when I share with a sponsee, I don't share with them how to do something. I share with them how it worked for me. And that's coming from a place within. That's staying in the house. That's not going out there to understand the world. That's the world within that has all the solutions. And I share how it worked for me. And I hope that they get hope that it would work for them too. The master arrives without leaving, sees the light without looking, and achieves without doing a thing. Stephen Mitchell said, the sage knows without going, names without seeing, and achieves without striving. Doesn't say he doesn't achieve, that he doesn't strive. I would take that as meaning that the sage does not make excessive effort within themselves. That's what I see as striving. Brian?
I went back to 46, and I was looking at some of. I was just really thinking about how it relates, piggybacks off 46, because it talks about, it's got the word greed, discontentment, all that outside stuff.
Yes.
That doesn't fix what we're looking for in 47. It's like 46 this is a problem, and 47, this is a solution.
Yes. Thank you. This addresses what I hear a lot when I talk about these things. And when I talk about surrender in recovery, I was on a podcast the other night, filling in as a co-host, and I was talking about surrender, and I noticed one of the other guys on the podcast was always trying to counter what I was saying. So I didn't respond to him, but he's having difficulty with the surrender. And that the interesting thing about surrender is, which is I think the goal of the program, is to have me be able to come to a place that I no longer strive, that I can achieve without doing. And that doing, for me, is within self. That self spinning and effort, push, that I was always good at. That working so hard and thinking that it was my excessive effort that caused what to do. Instead, now I just do what's in front of me to do. And I work. Don't get me wrong. I work. But the work is a place of ease without the stress that I used to have, because my work used to be motivated by that ball in my stomach. That's what motivated my work, and the zeros in the check account, or lack thereof. And so I was pushing all the time. Now, when I work, this is what I need to do. This is the next thing to do. Let me just do that. No ball in the stomach, no heavy stress with all of that. Not to say I'm there yet, but I can see it. It happens for me some. I believe that could be one way to apply this that we achieve without that excessive effort. Oscar?
I can relate to this story of you very much. When I look back at my life since a kid, I was obsessed by all kind of things and a lot of striving. I always wanted something impossible, and then I started fighting for it. And it's also how I was educated. Opinions, discussions, professions, work, money, later girls, later women, or a family, and I really felt like my life was I was rowing against a stream. It's really how it felt, like a really heavy duty life, work this life. And as a kind of a relief or solution for this, I used narcotics and alcohol and bought bitcoins and all kind of strange obsessive behavior, and all fighting, even fighting for peace, for inner peace, for rest or no. And then I wanted to quit the narcotics and I couldn't, but always fighting and rowing against this stream. And then the surrender point came when I entered the 12-step program, and the point of surrender came. Okay, I have to surrender. And my first impulse was also, no, I'm not going to surrender. I don't want to surrender. I can't surrender. But then pretty quick, I thought, okay, I can surrender. The unwillingness to surrender, I can surrender, and maybe then I can surrender. And it worked. And then the peace that came is, okay, I was in this rowing boat against the stream, and I could just, first of all, I could stop rowing and just lay down the pedals in the boat and sit back in the boat and go with the stream. It's completely the other way. It's not anymore upstream. I'm going the other way, but it's okay. It's the same. It doesn't matter. So surrendering is for me a real huge key geweest for entering this program. And it still is. I still surrender all defects that come up, everything. I surrender everything with all the love of the world now, but without resistance. I surrender without resistance. Thanks.
Thanks, Oscar. One aspect of surrender that I don't hear discussed very much, let's say it's a military surrender, and you're part of the military of a country that gets defeated, and you surrender. First of all, you lay down all of your weapons, everything. You stop fighting. You don't just stop for a little bit and pick them back up and fight some more. If you surrender, you stop fighting. Then, once you've surrendered and stopped the fight, given up your weapons, it's the victor's responsibility to take care of you. It's not your responsibility. And I realized that one day. I said, isn't that how recovery is? That's turning my will and my life over to the care of God as I understand God. So my job is different. My job is to surrender. And that's a full-time job. It is for me. That's not a one and done. Brian?
I got a friend he's the first person I text in the morning. I get up about 4 a.m. every morning, and he's at work, and I send him a text and say morning, and he says, what are you doing? And my answer is always coffee and surrender. Having coffee and getting my surrender going.
Yes. And it can creep in. It can creep in so easy, and I will start looking outward. When I'm looking outward for what I think I need, I have lost my surrender. I have lost it. I'm trying to take charge again. I'm trying to control. And guess what? If I'm not surrendered, the victor's not taking care of me, not meeting my needs. Yes.
Buddy, was it here I heard that thank you, it is enough prayer?
Thank you for everything. I have no complaint whatsoever. That one?
No, not that one. I heard one somewhere, could have swore it was on the podcast. It was just basically thank you, it is enough.
I don't know that one, but maybe.
Yeah. That one was short and sweet. I like that one as well.
Yes, it's more than enough. It's everything we need.
Yeah, it's always enough.
Yes. Thank you, Brian. Oscar?
Yes, if we start looking outside ourselves and the desires come back and the surrender is over, the victor doesn't take care of us anymore, and then we pick up the guns, right? If they don't look after us, we pick them up and we start all over again.
Yes. And it's not a punishment reward system, Oscar, like I used to think. It's the fact that unless I surrender, I cannot be taken care of. It's not anything that where I did something wrong. There's a punishment involved. It's impossible if I'm operating in fear, which that would be fear, to take care of myself, let's say, and I'm pushing. Let's say one way that could show, have an opportunity in business to take a shortcut, maybe cheat someone just a little bit or do something that's not quite moral, but I could rationalize. That's the ways that for me, I start looking outward. And I'm amazed at the times those opportunities pop up. And I choose to say, no, I can't do that. I've got to treat them the way I'd want to be treated myself. Then I've still left those weapons on the ground instead of picking them up. And the weapons my fear has is selfishness, dishonesty, and resentment. When those start showing up, I've picked up the weapons again, whether I realize it or not. Yeah. And what the way that I'm not taken care of is my peace leaves. My joy leaves. I have no peace. And why am I disturbed? The disturbance, as we see talks about in the 12 and 12, the spiritual axiom that when I'm disturbed, there's something wrong with me. Same thing. Yes. The master understands without leaving, sees clearly without looking, accomplishes much without doing anything. I like this one. I like all of them. Any more comments, guys? Anything else to add?
But this is Lou. I was just thinking earlier when I think Oscar was talking about a couple of things. One was the fear of death. And I had that fear, but I got rid of that fear because thinking, well, it's not really my death. It's the legacy. As long as the grandkids remember me and people talk about me. And then that's okay. And then the ego's a tricky thing. And it says, yeah, but how many millions of people have come through this and other sentient beings and blades of grass? And does it really matter that they remember? But that's all the same cycling of trying to learn or gain knowledge and trying to figure things out. It's just a more disguised way of trying to figure it out. And in some ways, when I read that sage does not go, don't even go there. It doesn't even go there. And to me, that's meaningful. Don't even get caught in the idea that you're going to figure it out. Let's back to what Oscar was talking about with the surrender. Don't go.
Yes. We're establishing a new business, and my salesman was having difficulty getting someone to return his calls that we had already talked to before. He was getting all upset. He was going to do this. And I said, well, don't do any of that. If we need to do business with them, they'll come back around. You've done everything you can. No need to push. Guess what? He got a phone call, and he had let go of some of that angst that was associated. It doesn't always work that way, but we can go through life without that self-imposed stress. And that's a lot of this too. Yeah, that's good. Anything else? It's been a good conversation today, guys. Thank you very much and hope to see you next week.
Hello, this is Buddy C. I wanted to make you aware of several recovery-related resources that I've posted in the episode description. These resources include a list of recovery podcasts, a free sober meditation app, daily recovery email, shared Google recovery calendars. Hope you put some of these resources to use and have a great week.
Thank you for listening to the Tao of Our Understanding Recovery Podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, please share it with your friends in recovery.